Hi, I'm Tim Sonova, and welcome to Work Shouldn't Suck Live, the morning-ish show. On today's episode, we're joined by Jamie Gahlon and Vijay Mathew, two of the co-founders of HowlRound Theatre Commons. But first, I'm pleased to welcome back to the show live streaming's favorite co-host, Lauren Ruffin. Lauren, how's it going today?
Well, it's good. A little bit breezy outside. Beautiful day in Albuquerque, and my neighborhood coyote decided to let me snap some pictures this morning.
That is still terrifying every time you talk about your neighborhood coyote. Did you use your real camera or your old cell phone 2 megapixel?
And by me, I mean Katie, because I don't actually have a functioning camera. I mean, and you are about to have an animal that's coyote adjacent coming to join your pack.
It's more dog than coyote, hopefully. Although I guess we'll find out tomorrow.
I said adjacent.
Yeah, it's adjacent. Yeah, so we'll see what our Monday live stream is like. We are closing out an incredibly uplifting and informative and fun-filled week of interviews with our guests today, Jamie Gahlon and Vijay Mathew, two of the co-founders of HowlRound Theatre Commons, based at Emerson College in Boston. HowlRound is a knowledge commons that encourages freely sharing intellectual and artistic resources and expertise, and was created as a direct response to research that suggested artists were increasingly distant from the center of theater making within the not-for-profit institutional infrastructure and the new possibilities created by technology to influence theater practice. Its founding came at a time when they were seeing too many voices left off our stages, not represented inside of our institutions, and not recognized for their substantial contribution to our past and present. The co-founders set about to create a group of tools that would amplify voices and issues chronically underrepresented and unheard in the theater. And we are excited for them to join our chat today. Without further ado, Jamie and Vijay, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so let's jump right in. One of the questions we've been, and I'm really, really excited to hear your responses, because I think the work that you're doing, the conversations you're having are so very timely for the sector, is sort of how is your community doing, and what are you hearing right now?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I would say that our community is vast and diverse, so we're hearing a lot of different things. I've been heartened to see and hear the work that a lot of individual artists are doing to promote knowledge sharing and solution envisioning right now in this moment. Obviously, it shouldn't go without saying, but the impact of the pandemic on the theater sector is devastating, in particular for freelance artists who have been hit incredibly hard. We've been lucky to collaborate and support on an incredible series via HowlRound TV with a group of freelance producers, Nicole Brewer, Hannah Fenlon, Anne-Marie Lonsdale, and Abigail Vega, who created a website called the Resources for Freelance Artists website. And they have been hosting an incredible ongoing series on HowlRound TV addressing the needs for freelance artists right now, talking about everything from processing this moment, grieving, sort of self-care, spiritual response, all the way to very practical financial strategies, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. Vijay, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, also there's, what's been really wonderful is our ability to immediately kind of support this kind of incubator, help support these initiatives that are really run by the community out there themselves. And that I feel like is our nice sweet spot or it's very fulfilling when we're able to do something like that and so quickly.
Yeah. So Tim gave y'all a fantastic but very formal bio.
It was Friday formal.
I missed the memo. How do y'all typically introduce yourselves and your work?
Yeah, so I guess I'd introduce myself as, hi, I'm Jamie Gahlon. I'm a producer, cultural organizer, theater maker. Currently based in Boston. I would introduce HowlRound's work, co-founder and director of HowlRound, as we're really building a kind of big table for conversation about the state of a big and open table for conversation about the state of the theater field globally, and with an eye towards trying to really push the field to be more progressive, equitable, just, and sustainable. And we function as a knowledge commons, which is another way of saying that might be more approachable, is that all of our content is community sourced. So our platform is really about stewarding the ideas and knowledge contributions of theater makers who choose to participate along the sort of values agenda that we've laid out. Mm-hmm. And all of our content is licensed under the Creative Commons, which means that it can be shared openly and freely, which is in line with our ethos.
Mm-hmm.
HowlRound has made some really amazing resources available to help people with the technology back end to be able to do this. And I think we should pause. Lauren and I should pause here to thank you for, in particular, the piece that Vijay, you wrote, how to produce a live streamed event. Spent several days poring over that, looking at the resources, testing stuff out. You were also so kind to test a couple of things out when we were in the early days with that. So for those who are interested in producing their own live stream event, HowlRound has some really amazing resources there. Also want to thank you for the piece that you wrote that I learned about in the fall. What's your vision for a post-carbon arts sector? Which was a really fascinating piece to read in the fall. And that was before we started seeing travel and life shutting down. In our green room, I was remarking that I saw a piece today that said, like 2 days ago, only 24 flights took off from LaGuardia, and in the month of January, just at LaGuardia, 31,000 flights landed and took off from there. We're seeing photos of places around the country, the globe, that have been sort of cloaked in smog for years, and we're seeing things, cities that have other than Albuquerque, coyotes walking down the center of the street, kangaroos, and sort of animals coming back to cities in a way that we haven't seen. I'm curious where your mind is right now as you think about what's going on in the world. How can we be proactive about some of these changes that are happening and holding on to into some of the positive ones?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're in a catastrophe right now. But at the same time, it feels like there's a bit of grace, or there's this time or this moment where before the more of the waves of climate change start to hit the global north, the wealthy countries, this is actually the moment. Like, this is the opportunity to totally refigure the way that we all operate as a society, as a civilization, as an economy. And I think, at the end of this kind of physical distancing moment, if we're kind of coming back into the same thing that we had, what will our future opportunities of taking pause, what will those look like? And will they be more difficult to actually recover from? So yeah, I think we're kind of like at a fork in the road right now, and actually this is maybe the opportunity, at least us in what we can do, what we have control over, or a little tiny influence over, is our arts field, and this is maybe the moment to redesign.
Lauren, we both did the same thing. We both backed up like we're coming in for a question. It's like that, merging lanes.
Yeah, in some ways, in terms of building pipes for other folks to sort of move along, the work that HowlRound does in North of Fractured Atlas is similar. And I'm curious about sort of your work structure as a team internally. How has that shifted over the last few months? And what tools and resources have been particularly helpful as you do this?
Yeah, I think how has our work structure shifted? So, I mean, I think, so really practically speaking, so, okay, on one hand, like everything has changed, but also in some ways, like nothing has changed because so much of our work, has existed digitally, primarily. And so now, we're all working from home. And obviously we all have different home circumstances that we're adjusting to and giving ourselves grace and flexibility with. But I would say like the biggest area of shift for us has probably been around the preponderance of TV events and figuring out how to adjust our capacity within our own staff to help meet the increased demand there. So we've brought back someone we used to work with, and we've also increased hours for some other folks that we've been working with. But in terms of how we work together as a team, a lot of it has, we've kept a lot of the rituals we had going before. So we have our weekly team check-ins, we have an editorial meeting. We're certainly like G-chatting a lot more. We're doing, more Zoom hangouts, and also we're anchored in the Office of the Arts at Emerson College. So HowlRound is a sort of pod that's part of a bigger culture of Office of the Arts, and there's a lot of meetups that we've been doing in that context as well, which have included things like yoga classes and meditation and other kinds of newer offerings around self-care that folks can choose to opt into.
Mm-hmm.
You all have been working for a decade on live streaming video events, and there's this rush of organizations and people now trying to figure this out. What have you found, for the quote unquote best practices, or for people to think about as they're hoping or trying to transition into more of a virtual convening setting than what might have formerly been 3D only?
Some like best practices. It depends. Like, not everything needs to be live streamed. Just a conversation that's not completely public can meet all the goals. That would be one thing, is really set the goals of why you're doing anything online and what you hope to achieve, and that can help determine the design of it. If it's just a video conference or a video conference that then gets live streamed. And also keep things short and planned, and maybe have an outline or structure, because I think we're all getting a bit of a screen fatigue now.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Or are you laughing, Tim, because you're so very structured?
I look at Lauren, and I'm like, I have a good sense what Lauren's thinking about me thinking about what I'm thinking about. But yeah, it's like I often refer to it as the Zoom meeting exhaustion coefficient. That's like, at least it used to be just twice as exhausting as a 3D meeting, and I think it might be 3 or 4 times as exhausting now, because we're just going from one thing to the next, and it's just all on our screen. And it's no longer a 3D meeting and then a Zoom meeting and then something else, and you go outside and you walk around, and so just the back to back, I think. Maybe it's as the day goes on, what could have been a 60-minute meeting, you're good if you get 10 out of it, before people just start to fade.
Yeah. I just think that's like the importance of saying no to things and of being really protective of your calendar. I think is definitely, so many of our guests have struggled with the shift to being totally on screens.
And I think one of the things that we may take back, like all of us, is that a lot of in-person meetings, gatherings, conferences don't actually have to happen in person. And I think we're getting an idea of what's important to actually have in person, and what can you actually accomplish really well and with a lot less resources online.
Yeah, it does amplify that meme about how this meeting could have been an email.
Yeah.
I feel like when it's a video, it's really hard. Yeah, for sure. I'm also sort of in that vein. Are there aspects of working like this that you think you will keep, Or do you feel like, if things open up, and I use that very tongue in cheek, are you going to go back to the way that y'all were working previously?
Like, I'm personally more productive than I've ever been, but just because no more commute and the ability to like walk around and go to my kitchen.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think before we were like pretty office based with like 1 day a week work from home. I think that certainly there will be shifts, I would imagine, around flexibility of just like where we work and how we work moving forward, more flexibility there. I think, I guess I'm really interested in thinking about the things that folks are doing now in the field, the pivots that I'm seeing, and what we might carry with us moving forward. Out of this moment of crisis. So, I've been really inspired by all of these mutual aid networks popping up, right? I mean, they're essentially commons in action, both from like the hyper local Slack channel that me and my neighbors have to like keep each other sane and offer mutual support and like get that tomato that somebody might have that you need or what have you, all the way to stuff that I'm noticing in the field happening, like the ICA in their East Boston location is now a fresh food distribution center. Same thing with Jack in Brooklyn. They've partnered with the We Keep Us Safe Abolitionist Network to set up as a food distribution center. We know that all of these theaters and many theaters are sewing masks, right? Like folks have found ways to pivot to be part of some of the essential services that are so needed right now and integrated in response to local community needs. And as well as looking at things like the work of coalitions around emergency response, I so much is needed. But I've been very inspired by, the launch of the Artist Relief Fund, what YPCA is doing in the Bay Area on a more local level. And I guess, and third strand, I think, is around the artist-led relief initiatives, right? So like trickle up, thinking about new models for support for artists, thinking about the work that, the freelance producers are doing that I referenced at the top of the call, and this sort of generosity of knowledge sharing that's happening on platforms like HowlRound and elsewhere. And I guess I hope, or I'm wondering, and I'm curious about what we can learn from these kind of these behaviors that have felt so needed in this moment and are coming out as a response for this moment. But I hope that the behaviors that we carry with us moving forward and that help us create a kind of a different landscape for our field moving forward that can serve more of us.
Before we pivot to a viewer question, Lauren, I think your boom mic is joining as a fifth member of this podcast.
Is it even worse? Oh, I moved it. It's worse than it was before?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think we're, for those listening, the sort of gong is just an affirmative gong / boom mic. So.
Yeah, technical struggles.
Yeah.
I might mute myself and then pick it up and hold it with my hand. Very
great. Let's pivot to a question that's coming in. Jamie, I think you both were talking about these things. I just wanted to see if there's anything else that might get picked up here. The question is, can you give a sense of the various conversations emerging on the journal and how the communities you serve are faring, feeling challenged, and feeling hopeful?
Oh, hi, Diane. Thank you for this question. Let's see, there's so many threads of conversation emerging. I will think of, I'll pull on maybe just a couple pieces, and then Vijay, you should weigh in too. So we published a beautiful essay this week by Noelle Viñas, who's a playwright based in New York, and she was sort of reflecting on a lot of the different opinions that have been floating around the notion of making in this moment. And sort of the role of a playwright in this moment. And the thing that I found so she talked about how we often speak of theater, that theater is often an art of futurity, that we're looking to the future, we're planning. And she sort of offered a provocation around thinking, what if we think of theater as an art of the now, right? Like what does that mean in this moment around how we make, who we make with, what our priorities are, the kind of models we need to support the work. And I thought that's a question that I've been sitting with. I think another thread of conversation that has been really, I guess we've been talking about it a lot as a team since we published this piece, was Kaja Dunn wrote a beautiful piece about the need to take a pause and the need for us to, in this moment, give ourselves time to process and grieve and sort of intentionally resist capitalism's insatiable need and urge for productivity and to produce. I guess I feel maybe less equipped to speak on behalf of communities writ large, Diane, and how they're feeling hoped and challenged. I feel more inclined to pull out just a few specific voices that have felt really compelling to me in this moment. But I'll throw it over to Vijay, who I'm sure has some other opinions.
Yeah, I think we're still also in a moment of people just dealing and processing the shock of what has happened, and so I think we're seeing a lot of that in the TV live streaming programming, where we have a lot of master classes, playwriting classes happening, like Susan Laurie Park's Watch Me Work from Home, which was an ongoing series, but now it's happening every day at 5 p.m. Eastern, and it's a moment to work on the craft of playwriting, but it's also a time to come together as a community just to see each other from all our places in isolation, and kind of to collectively process the trauma of what's going on. And interestingly, we have 2 other playwriting series going on as well, the Latinx superhero playwriting class. And then there's also this other kind of emerging story or idea of how in these crises, the already marginalized communities and people get doubly or triply marginalized. And so there's been a very interesting series of live streaming events organized by a collective called Unsettling Dramaturgy. And they've had 2 events already. One was about specifically about land acknowledgements, and another was about CRIP and indigenous dramaturgies. And they're an action group in a sense of trying to figure out how they can start to center these ideas so that it becomes mainstream practice.
Mm-hmm. I'm also, along those same lines, one of the things that I've always wondered about making theater as someone who is not an artist or theater maker at all, is are you seeing ensemble groups continue to create together and having plans to produce or show work online from separate places? Is there anything sort of innovative happening in that realm?
Oh yeah, definitely. So in addition to tons of conversations that are happening, people are starting to figure out performance from using in physical distancing, mm-hmm. And using these internet technologies to collaborate around performance, and so that happened. That coincided with the number that started mid-March, where people putting on performances, adapting immediately what they were doing in person to the online space.
Yeah.
And regularly there are organizations such as Culture Hub and La Mama, both based in New York City, that are creating a platform for artists to figure these things out, to really truly experiment with these technologies to see how performing artists can can use them.
Yeah, it strikes me, just knowing what I know about the economic model for theater. There's such a high cost to needing to work in the same place. And it strikes me that there's a real ability to unlock capacity and resources and connection and collaboration if you let go of needing to be in shared space and start thinking about shared reality instead. And I'm just really curious to see how that plays out in the theater field in particular.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I also think, like, along those lines, like the folks that Vijay just referenced, you know, I think we're in a really fascinating moment where folks are beginning to move beyond just transposition of what was the real thing into digital and into thinking through what it means to be kind of innately digital right now, right? Because of this forced circumstance. But I do wonder, you know, what are the practices and new norms that we're going to bring with us wherever we may go as a result of this time? And that feels very exciting and very much like a you know, like a well for new creativities, especially when we think about things like lessening our carbon footprint, like, yeah, the resource allocations that you talk about, and accessibility of all of this work.
Laura, this feels like a good time for the suitcase question.
Yeah. Okay. I need to figure out who does the backpack. So the suitcase question started with Deborah Cullinan. She was on our show talking about how she has all the suitcase that she carries around with her with workplace practices and life practices. And she realizes that she's unpacking a lot of stuff and then putting in a lot of new things new habits and new behaviors that she's learning as she's working more and more online. And so my question for both of you is, what is one thing that you are throwing out of your suitcase that you've been carrying around for a long time? Can be work, can be personal. And what's one behavior or practice that you have just started to do that you are going to carry far into the future?
I guess by necessity, I feel like I've thrown out equating real life with together, I think I've decoupled togetherness and like intimacy on some level with real life. Whether or not I want to, but I think that's something I'm feeling right now. And I think one thing that I'm carrying forward I guess I have a certain number of rituals that I feel like I've developed in this moment. And for me, they're around the sort of cultivating space for work time when I'm in my 808 square foot apartment. That's also my personal space. And I think there's some, they're very simple. They're about changing my kitchen table from a kitchen table to my desk. And I think there's something really beautiful about those small rituals. And also I have I've had a gratitude practice that I've been cultivating for a while, but I think that has felt even more important to me now. And that's something that I will also carry forward, just like a daily, gratitude practice.
Awesome.
Okay. Vijay?
Yeah, so the thing I'm throwing out of my suitcase, I think, is the kind of maybe the despair or hopelessness that things can't and won't change fast. I was so kind of surprised by literally how we could dial down, the world could dial down on what it's doing within a week. Extraordinary kind of thing. And because the fact that the way that our civilization works, it felt such a huge insurmountable monolith that how does anyone ever stop that machine from running? So throwing out that notion, that kind of mental thing, throwing that out. And then I'm adding just taking care of myself, walking every morning is a wonderful thing.
Awesome. as we land the plane on this episode, one of 24 planes landing at LaGuardia, I guess. What are your parting thoughts? Something maybe we haven't covered that you really think is important to leave in the space, or just, whatever's on your mind.
Yeah, one thing on my mind is that, as we're creating new things, that we really, really think hard and prioritize accessibility and inclusion, like what Jamie mentioned earlier, especially when we do online things. And that's one thing. And also that, this online world that we're all like now diving into, that we figure out limits to that and actually think about, what does a metered internet look like? What if the internet's actually a scarce resource, which it is, but we live under the illusion that it's unlimited, that we can always have this energy running all of these servers.
I guess I'm just really thinking about notions of mutual support on like both, a person-to-person level and field-wide, right? Like, our field is broken, and many of us may have felt this before, but you look at what's happening now, and we need to fundamentally rebuild like how we work together and what our systems are, and we need to put artists at the center of those systems, and we need to build equitable models of support. So I think this is an opportunity for us all to really interrogate our status quo on every level and think through, how we can build a better models moving forward.
Great. Jamie, Vijay, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
All right, we are back on Monday at 11 a.m. with another powerhouse week of guests. We have two more powerhouse weeks of guests coming up, but next week, Kathy Edwards, Executive Director of New England Foundation for the Arts, Edgar Villanueva, Senior Vice President of Programs and Advocacy at the Schott Foundation and author of Decolonizing Wealth, Dina Haggag, President and CEO of United States Artists, and two of our amazing frequent viewers and virtual chatters and generally awesome people, Diane Ragsdale and Andrew Taylor. Lauren and I will miss you in the meantime between now and Monday. If you miss us too, you can download all of our previous episodes from your favorite podcasting platform of choice. You can find us on workshouldnsuck.co. You can read transcripts of previous episodes. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the episode, which we certainly have. But we probably should give ourselves a thumbs up. But we'll give our guests a thumbs up. Give it a thumbs up. Until next time, thanks so much for being with us.